Tony Stark has been the staple of the MCU and is oftentimes regarded as the face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. With one of the longest tenures as a superhero, Tony Stark has faced down death on a number of different occasions, on both the main timeline MCU and in the various alternate timelines we've seen courtesy of the What If series. While Tony Stark did finally meet his end in Avengers Endgame, his myriad of different demises in the What If series has led many fans to believe that his death is an event that is known as an absolute point in time. So stick with us, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, as today we'll be exploring just that, and that theory. Is Tony's death an absolute point? A brief disclaimer before we get started. For this video, we will be proposing both sets of evidence as to why it may be, and why it might not be. We are simply here to provide the objective stances, but we'll leave the final decision up to you as the viewer. We are simply presenting both sides of the argument, and it's up to you to determine if Tony's death is in fact an absolute point. First though, we have to discuss what an absolute point is, and let's clear up some confusion about the prospect of an absolute point in time, and cover the two main explanations as to what exactly this means. In episode 4 of What If, we are introduced to the concept of an absolute point via the death of Christine Palmer, thus setting in motion the alternate Doctor Strange's downfall. However, based on our research and evidence, option 1 proposes that the death of Christine was not the absolute event that cannot be changed, as the episode itself seems to indicate. Instead, the absolute point in question is the loss of what Strange loves the most. In this universe, this loss takes the form of Christine's death, seeing as he had a much stronger relationship with her than he did in the main timeline MCU. In the main timeline, Doctor Strange loves his work and his lifestyle more than Christine. Therefore, this is what he is destined to lose that fateful day. In losing his hands, Doctor Strange is no longer able to continue his surgical career and is destined to lose what he loves the most in life, which is his wealth, notoriety, and his lifestyle. With this being the constant between all of the universes, in order to grow as a person, he's destined to lose the thing that he attaches his identity to and is forced to grow. In What If episode 4, this means Christine, and in the main timeline MCU, it means his career and his ability to perform surgeries. The second interpretation is the absolute points are specific to their own universe, and each branch has their own set that does not overlap with others. These are the two principal interpretations, and it's important to keep both in mind as we explore this possibility, seeing as Marvel has not yet confirmed which of these two is the correct answer. Each of these events have the exact same result: Doctor Strange's introduction to sorcery and ascension to the title of Sorcerer Supreme. Much like Doctor Strange losing what he loves, we know that absolute points can take place in many different ways. We know that Christine Palmer's death takes on multiple forms, and so it stands to reason that Tony Stark's may as well. And it seems as if death has been chasing Stark since the beginning in all of the multiverse. All the way back to the first Iron Man, the fallout of his battle with the Ironmonger seems to hint at the idea that Tony's arc reactor is failing, and that he may very well die in the closing minutes of the movie. This of course though does not happen, and Tony survives, but it is a precedent that carries forward throughout the MCU. He nearly dies upon destroying the Chitauri army and falling back down to Earth, as well as in Age of Ultron when he destroys the Sokovian meteor. In Infinity War, he seems close to meeting his ends at the hand of Thanos on Titan, and perhaps his closest near-death experience until his actual demise in Endgame. This popular fan theory proposes that Tony Stark's premature death is an absolute point that has been chasing him for years, and it will inevitably catch up to him at some point before he is graced with the ability to live a long life and die of natural causes. Essentially, Tony Stark is meant to die. In the What If series, we see multiple occasions of this inevitable event catching up to him sooner than in Endgame, implying that it is destined to happen in one way or another, and Tony Stark has just been lucky enough that death doesn't catch up to him until Endgame, or rather that the TVA has deemed it so. We see him being assassinated by Hank Pym, infected by the zombie virus, and killed by Eric Killmonger respectively. If death is in fact chasing Tony Stark, then his premature demise might be an absolute point in time, only it takes different forms depending on the timeline that he is currently on. Now, let's address some of the flaws with this theory, and see if it still holds up to scrutiny, but like we said, we will leave the final verdict up to you, the viewer. The first flaw is that Christine Palmer's resurrection was prohibited by the fact that it was paradoxical. If Doctor Strange stops this moment, then he never becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. Thus, he can't revive her, and the loop begins again and tears a hole in reality itself. While it's very likely that absolute points can be non-paradoxical, it is implied that a driving factor behind this event being an absolute point is the fact that it would create a cosmic paradox. There is no evidence to suggest that Tony Stark surviving past Endgame causes a similar paradox, though that remains to be seen with the future of the multiversal arc. It is highly likely that at some point in the near future, Kang, or one of his variants, will reveal the reason that Tony Stark had to die within a certain span of time, and could not be allowed to live on beyond a certain point in history. The other main point of contention is that an absolute point seems to need to result in a certain outcome. With Doctor Strange, both of his absolute points result in him becoming a sorcerer, whether it is because he loses his hands like in our timeline, or if it's the form of losing Christine like he did in the What If episode. Tony Stark's deaths throughout the What If series seems to have nothing in common so far as we can tell. But again, it is possible that this result will be revealed in the history of the multiversal saga. In order for this theory to make airtight sense, there has to be a reason why Tony Stark absolutely cannot be allowed to live beyond a certain landmark time on the timeline, a direct result that somehow impacts the future of the MCU timeline. Perhaps it is an invention that Tony is destined to discover that cannot come to life, or his death motivates a particular individual to take a particular course of action. We know that this individual cannot be Morgan, as she isn't born in most of the realities yet. It could hypothetically drive someone like Pepper Potts or Happy Hogan to make a decision that has been a predetermined aspect of the timeline. But again, the direct ramifications that Tony Stark's death would have on the multiversal saga have yet to be seen. Therefore, the main flaw with this theory, and the premier evidence as to why it can't work, could very well be rectified in the near future, meaning that this flaw might be living on borrowed time, meaning that Tony Stark's death is in fact an absolute point in time, and that he is destined to give his life or be killed somewhere all along the multiverse, that for some reason he does not exist past Avengers Endgame, but why is unknown as of now. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think Tony Stark's premature death is an absolute point in time? And if so, why do you think it is? If you do not believe that Tony Stark's death is an absolute point, do you think we'll ever see a reality in which Tony is allowed to retire, living a long life, and die of natural causes at some point in his old age? We would love to hear your thoughts and theories on this in the comments down below. As always, my friends, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.